I'm Emily.
And I'm Ethan.
We're traveling across America in search of its most captivating communities.
All the while, we're working from the road and taking the adventures as they come.
This is
Remote!
Oh, poetry! Whence thou camest from branch on high, beckon from the bog where the crone doth wallow, win forth hitherto whence thou camest to me upon my deathbed and said, why canst thou not be well?
We're on a poetry walk, and as such, Ethan will now recite a poem.
I poemed too soon. Okay, hold on, I gotta...
Today we're in Hillsborough, North Carolina, and we happen to be here for a artist open studio day. Hillsborough is a small town in Orange County, North Carolina, located about 20 minutes northwest of Durham. It caught my eye because 57% of its 7,000 residents are college educated, the highest of any place we've seen so far. And that should be unsurprising since North Carolina has some of the most prestigious universities in the country, including UNC Chapel Hill, Duke, and Wake Forest. If there's anywhere you'd find a poetry walk, makes sense it would be here. What do you think of Hillsborough?
It is quiet and charming and very picturesque for a small town in the Appalachians.
We're not in the Appalachians anymore. We spent the day perusing galleries and chatting with artists before strolling along the town's scenic river jogging trail. Before this became the town of Hillsborough, it was home to 3 different Indian tribes. The Occaneechi, for which this village has been rebuilt to show us the way that they lived. And also the Eno people, for whom the river is named, that river right there, across the fence. And the Ha, H-A-W, which we don't know anything about them yet. To life in an Occaneechi hut.
Can't find the Wi-Fi.
We stayed in a nearby cottage with a rose garden full of beautiful flickering lanterns at night. It was a lovely and idyllic setting. There was a forest preserve a couple miles down the road. I took full advantage of the wide, flat trails and got some good trail runs in. It was fun to imagine a time when this whole part of the country was covered in trees. No roads, no fences, no buildings. The pre-colonial forests looked unrecognizable to what we have today. Stretching across this region were once old-growth oaks, cottonwoods, sycamores, and ashes reaching 3 to 5 feet in diameter. The woods teemed with elk and woodland buffalo. But of course, things were different then, and today, you're lucky just to see a squirrel. Timber has always been, and continues to be, a main export for North Carolina. As a result, there is virtually no virgin forest left in the state. Early settlers cleared the trees and replaced them with agriculture that stripped the soil of nutrients. For a long time, the land was in pretty bad shape. But of course, North Carolina is just one of many places that have pillaged natural resources. The real question is, how can we do better going forward? Fortunately, the last couple of weeks, work has gotten really demanding, so we've honestly barely had time to even see the places where we're visiting, which is kind of sad. And also, like, you take it for granted that there's a lot of daylight hours in the summer, and now it's dark by the time I get off work, and so that kind of puts a damper on things too. Really, the only things that we've been able to see are on Saturdays when we're traveling, and then like if I get up early to go on a jog somewhere. Did make it out early one morning to the Eno River State Park, which was well worth the early rise. We said goodbye to Hillsborough and headed off to our next destination. We are in Old Salem and just came out of the Horton Museum Center, which was super interesting. They had a room of old antique maps of the eastern United States, which was just fascinating. It showed like where all the Indian tribes were and the names of the forts. Had little notations about like what area might be good for farming.
Yeah, it was really cool to see. It was mostly topographical the further west you went because all the towns were towards the east, and then out west it was just like mountains and rivers and huge blank spaces with not many words on the map. So it gave you an idea of how daunting it must have been to be a traveler back then going through just unknown territory.
Yeah, and no GPS, obviously. It's just you and your silk map, and if you lose it, then you're dead, I guess.
Don't drop the map.
Yeah. Old Salem is a historic district of Winston-Salem, North Carolina, that was originally settled by the Moravian community of 1766. This small city features a living history museum that interprets the restored Moravian community. We just visited the Moravian church here and learned some really interesting things about the history of the Moravian church. It was actually the first Protestant denomination ever, long before Lutheran, about 100 years before Martin Luther, they said. That was interesting. There are Moravian churches all over Europe, and in the 1700s the Moravians decided to come out to America to work with the Native Americans, and they had great relationship with the Cherokee who were here at the time, and I guess last week a Cherokee tribe leader came out in celebration of the relationship with the Moravians. And the only written history of the Cherokee tribe comes from the Moravian diaries, which is interesting. And apparently there's quite a bit of writing, and so that would be really interesting to read. It's recently been translated to English. So the settlers in this area spoke German, they were German, and the original tract of land on which Salem was built was 100,000 acres, and they named it Wachovia. This is also where Wachovia the bank came from. So there's some history for you.
was the seed swap and horticulture center for Salem, and here is where they stored all their heirloom seeds for hundreds of varieties of plants that are very hard to find, and it was a big staple in their community, not only as food but also as medicine for the doctor's apothecary just down the street.
They are pretty. So the Moravians just grew them for ornamental reasons, but in Central America and Mexico, they're used medicinally, antifungal, antibacterial.
This is the black basket. They use these to like weed with.
Hi, how are y'all?
We shall now draw water from the town well. Oh well.
We also visited the doctor's house, which was really cool because it was where his family lived, and also he had an apothecary, which was to dispense all of his different medicinal plants and herbs and tinctures. And then upstairs they had like old surgical tools that he would use, and it talked about all the different kind of operations that they had to perform back then without the use of anesthetic, unfortunately. So the doctor was very busy. He was the doctor, the dentist, the vet, and also the apothecary for the town. So very popular guy.
For the first 100 years of its history, Salem would only allow you to live in the town if you were Moravian by faith. And if you weren't, then you could live in Winston. So the two towns were close together but very, very different in culture, and they didn't merge until much, much later in history. Cute! That was immensely enjoyable, and now I definitely have a new appreciation for North Carolina.
I have a new appreciation for old-timey things like bone saws.